At the Vatican, there are 32 archways on each side of the courtyard, with a giant obelisk in the middle. The Pope's cassock has 32 buttons, and his head represents the 33rd. The symbol for the Soviet Union has 32 rays emanating from the sun, being the 33rd. On 3/3/03, the UN World Prayer Center called for everyone to pray simultaneously at 3:30 p.m. The ceiling in the United Nations General Assembly Room has a large circular light, surrounded by 32 smaller lights. The UN building is 39, 13 times 3, stories high, and sits on land donated by Freemason David Rockefeller. The United Nations flag shows the flat earth divided into 33 sections, encircled by olive branches. The flag also happens to be blue, just like the first 3 blue degrees of Masonry. There are 13 degrees of York Rite Masonry and 33 degrees of Scottish Rite. Our measuring system originated in Masonic France in the 1790s, which explains why 13 standard inches is equal to precisely 33 metric centimeters. Ice freezes and changes back to water at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, also corresponding with Masonic degrees of illumination, since every high-level Mason who hasn't yet contributed significantly to the great work is frozen at 32 degrees. 33 is the first degree that the illuminated can move freely throughout the organization. The very idea of measuring heat by degrees is Masonic. So is your diploma degree, and getting the 3rd degree, which comes from the Masonic 3rd degree ceremony, in which the initiate must answer many probing personal questions. The eagle, one of the main symbols of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, is found on the dollar bill. It has 32 feathers on its right wing, symbolizing the 32 formal degrees of Scottish Rite Masonry, but he's looking at his left wing, which contains an extra 33rd feather, representing the 33rd degree, held by many world leaders and historical figures. Head of the Supreme Council of World Freemasonry, Albert Pike, invented the 33rd degree of Freemasonry in 1832. He was Chief Judicial Officer and co-founder of the KKK. K is the 11th letter of the alphabet, and 11 times 3 equals 33, making KKK 33. 2 Samuel 5:5 says, "In Hebron he, King David, reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, 7 plus 6 equals 13, and in Jerusalem he reigned 30 years, 33, over all Israel and Judah." There are multiple references to 33 in the Bible: 33 days of purification, 33 sons and daughters of Israel, and 3,300 officers of King Solomon. King David reigned in Jerusalem for 33 years. The Star of David is 2 triangles, meaning 2 threes, 33. There are exactly 33 titles in the Old Testament for the Antichrist, and 13 in the New Testament. Most importantly, Jesus was baptized at age 30, began his 3-year ministry, then died and was resurrected at age 33. Michael Tessarian wrote, "The sun enters at the 30th degree, but is not totally clear until the 33rd degree, as it is of a certain size also. This is why they said in the Bible that the ministry of Christ begins at 30 and finishes at 33. This reference would have been unmistakable to anyone aware of the secrets of astrology. The number is connected to the initiation of the sun, S-U-N, of God, not S-O-N, passing through the zodiac. This is why Freemasonic lodges also utilize this number. In astrology, the sun officially transitions into a new sign of the zodiac at the 33rd degree, a concept well known long before Christianity. Dante's Divine Comedy divided into 3 sections, 34 cantos of Inferno, 33 cantos of Purgatorio, and 33 cantos of Paradiso. The human foot has 33 muscles. The human spine has 33 vertebrae. The Indy 500 traditionally starts with 3 rows of 11 race cars. There is a band called 311. The Bank of America logo is 3 sets of 11s. The Queen Mother's time of death was reported 3:15, both hands on the 3 equals 33. Enron CEO Kenneth Lay bought the entire 33rd floor of his building and lived in condo number 33. The Masonic Great Seal with the Latin New World Order was added to the dollar bill in 1933. Walt Disney was a 33rd degree Freemason, and Disneyland has a Club 33. The Magic Kingdom Castle was designed after the Neuschwanstein Castle in Bavaria, where the Illuminati was formed. During World War II, 33rd degree Winston Churchill gave us the V for Victory, 2-finger salute, which since the 60s became peace. Before this Masonic sign stood for victory or peace, it was a symbol of the 33rd degree. There are 3 joints to the knuckle on 2 fingers, making 33, then held apart like a V is about 33 degrees. 33rd degree Mason Buzz Aldrin and son of a 33rd degree Mason Neil Armstrong Jr. supposedly performed a Masonic ceremony 33 minutes after arriving on the moon, held the Masonic flag, and took pictures of each other. On 2703, a Columbia nightclub blast killed 33 people. Stanley Kubrick was murdered exactly 666 days before the start of 2001, his Space Odyssey. 2001 Space Odyssey was first shown in 1968, 33 years before 2001. Rosemary's Baby was filmed in the Dakota Building, where John Lennon, who personally knew Polanski, was shot to death. In the movie, the elites, including a cameo by Church of Satan founder Anton LaVey, demand her baby for success and fame. 1 year after, Polanski's pregnant wife, Sharon Tate, was murdered by Charles Manson's followers. Manson was later seen frantically waving Masonic gestures at his trial. The JFK assassination was right next to the 33rd degree latitude line in the 11th month on the 22nd day. 11 plus 22 is 33, right when he entered the Pyramid at Dealey Plaza. Ronald Reagan was shot in the 3rd month on the 30th day. Jim Marrs wrote, "Little more than 2 months after taking office, President Reagan was struck by an assassin's bullet, which, but for 1/4 of an inch, would have propelled Bush into the Oval Office 7 years before his time. Oddly enough, the brother of the would-be assassin, John W. Hinckley, had scheduled dinner with Bush's son Neil the very night Reagan was shot. Hinckley's Texas oilman father and George Bush were longtime friends. It should also be noted that Bush's name, including his then little-publicized nickname Poppy, along with his address and phone number, were found in the personal notebook of oil geologist George Mohrenschildt, the last known close friend of Lee Harvey Oswald. Jesus was crucified by the Roman government and died for 3 days at age 33. Alexander the Great also died at 33. Pope John Paul I was murdered after being in power for only 33 days. David Koresh, leader of the Branch Davidians at Waco, Texas, was killed by the U.S. government at 33 years old, near the 33rd parallel. Oklahoma City bombing suspect Timothy McVeigh was also murdered by the government at 33 years old. There were 33 victims in the suspicious Virginia Tech shootings in April 2007. Day Williams wrote, "Significant though it was, the JFK assassination is only one among many calculated murders that have happened along or close to the 33rd parallel. The number of murders of people of high position and key witnesses along the 33rd parallel is significant. Many significant events in modern history have taken place on the 33rd parallel. For example, 33rd degree Freemason and 33rd President of the U.S., Harry Truman, entered the world into the nuclear age with an atom bomb test at the 33rd parallel Trinity test site in White Sands. He later authorized 2 more to be dropped near the 33rd parallel at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. About 3 years later, at the 33rd parallel in Roswell, New Mexico, was the famous UFO sighting and subsequent Area 51 base. JFK was murdered at Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas, near the 33rd parallel, on 11/22/63. Dealey Plaza is shaped like a pyramid, with a missing capstone, and was also the site of the first Masonic temple in Dallas. The Olympic Park bombing in Atlanta, Georgia, was also on the 33rd parallel. Elizabeth Van Buren said, "In spiritual numerology, 33 symbolizes the highest spiritual consciousness attainable by the human being. 3 very significant 33s relate to the human body and spirituality, and it is likely the esoteric understanding of these 3 33s that is coveted by Masons of the 33rd degree. First, there are exactly 33 turns in a complete sequence of human DNA. The second significant 33 is the number of vertebrae in the human spine. In ancient Kundalini Yoga, the Kundalini serpent energy is said to rise from the root chakra, coiling up and around the spine until illuminating the crown chakra of spiritual enlightenment. This may sound like bogus Eastern mysticism, until this sacred number 33 shows parallels in the world of Western occult studies. The ancient Hebrew Kabbalistic Tree of Life contains 33 permutations of consciousness, 10 Sephiroth, including the 11th hidden Sephiroth, and 22 paths. Just as the Kundalini serpent coils up the 33 vertebrae of the spine, the Tree of Life is often drawn with the serpent coiling up and around, showing the path to take towards Kether, the crown chakra. Aurum Solis wrote, "A symbol for the limbic system and the Kundalini energy, the lizard, also represents the cyclical movement of energy through the universe and the space-time continuum, birth, death, rebirth, ad infinitum." Genevieve Lewis wrote, "Many people regard Kundalini as a New Age fad. Nothing could be further from the truth. Kundalini can be considered the oldest known science. In previous ages, people raised Kundalini under the guidance of teachers and in controlled circumstances, preserving what they learned as an esoteric knowledge. But we have entered a period of time in which the esoteric becomes exoteric." The serpent wound around the tree that talks with Eve in Genesis references this process of spiritual illumination. The ancient caduceus symbol of Hermes, Mercury, and Thoth, now used by the Western pharmaceutical industry, also symbolizes this process. 2 intertwining snakes, which look exactly like our 33-sequence double helix DNA, climb a straight vertical pole, which looks like our 33 vertebrae spine, and end at the circle of light, crown chakra, which has sprouted wings. These are the same wings pins worn by the military, police, and pilots, and given to children on commercial planes. The origin of this symbology goes back to the ancient Atlantean myth, precursor to the Genesis story. At the center of Atlas's garden was the great Tree of Life, just as in the Garden of Eden. This tree produced unique golden apples of immortality, reserved only for the most purified and holy beings. Atlas's 7 daughters were known as the Hesperides, and their main duty was tending and defending the Tree of Life. Assisting them in its protection was a familiar friend coiled around the tree. Frank Joseph wrote, "To assist the Hesperides in its protection, a serpent called Ladon entwined about the bough. The Hesperides are sometimes given as 7 in number. As such, they may correspond to the 7 major chakras, or metaphysical energy centers, that collectively comprise the human personality. So too, the Tree of Life symbolizes the spinal column, along which the chakras are arranged. This interpretation suggests that Kundalini Yoga originated in Atlantis, from which it spread around the world. Indeed, the Tree of Life is a theme frequently encountered in many European and Asian traditions of Atlantis and Lemuria. Thus it would seem that the secret of 33, the secret held by 33rd degree Freemasons, is one regarding spiritual consciousness, one that dates back to ancient Egypt and Atlantis. The Masonic symbol of a pillar holding up the earth no doubt relates to this Atlantean mythos, in which Atlas held the world on his shoulders. In the dictionary, one definition of Atlas is the anatomical term for the first cervical vertebra, which supports the head. This means the 33rd vertebra from the bottom, as the serpent travels, the very vertebra which supports our heads and minds, is actually called Atlas. So the Atlas vertebra holds up the world, our minds. Atlas has 7 daughters, chakras, who guard the tree of life, our spinal column, and its golden apples of immortality.